Hi, welcome to lecture number 21. We were talking about looping structure and we were doing some examples. Now we'll talk about one more looping structure, which is called for loop. So we'll be talking about what is loop, what is for loop, and then for syntax, then for loop example, then increment decrement operators, then compound operators. I'll be giving you some tips. At the end I'll be giving you two tasks, and in the next lecture we'll be solving those tasks. So what is loop? We know about the loop in the previous lecture. That is, the loop is in the loop there are three things involved. The first thing is initialization of loop, the second thing is continuation by termination condition, and the third one is changing the value of the condition so that we are not stuck in the infinite loop condition. We have already talked about it tons of time. I'm just explaining it one more time. Consider we have a condition initialized to 0 or initialized to 1. Now the continuation by termination condition is looking for true. This will be kind of looking at whether the condition is true or false. So based on that it will make decision whether to execute the block of statement inside the loop or not. So a continuation condition could be that a condition is greater than or equal to 10 or not, or less than or equal to 10 or not. And the next part is inside the block of code. Usually in while loop we have changed the value of the condition inside the block of code, inside the braces below the while loop, inside the process. But in for loop all these three things will happen at once in one line. These are three different statements, but these will happen at once in one line, and there will be no need for changing the value of the condition inside the process. So we should not be worried about changing the condition inside the process and be afraid of infinite loop in case if we forget to change the value inside the process or inside the block of statements inside the while loop. So that's why maybe for loop is most often used structure to perform repetition tasks for a known number of repetition. They usually don't have that much of a difference. Any task that could be done with while loop could almost be done with for loop, almost any kind of a task. It is about preference, and I usually prefer for loop, and I most of the time end up using for loop much more than while loop. So now the syntax of for is this: for, and then these three conditions of initial condition, continuation condition, and then incrementing condition, and then the statement. I think so without spending time in explaining it theoretically here, I just want to give you an example. In example we will use the for loop and we will print the values from 0 to 9. Now if I go to the example, open the new source file, and here we have for loop. In for loop we have condition. First of all, declare the variable and then declare the variable, say condition, and this variable should be initialized to 0 because we want to enter the print the value from 0 up to 9. So it will be initialized to 0, and the condition which should be checked is whether this condition is less than 10, because we want to print the values from 0 to 9, not including 10. First of all, this is not equal to, because this in itself is a statement but is written in one line for loop. Okay, this in itself is a second statement, and then the third statement is about incrementing. So condition is equal to condition plus 1. So for after every loop the condition will be incremented by the value of 1. So for the first loop, in the first loop the condition's value will be 0, in the next loop the condition value will be 1, depending that condition is this condition less than 10 is true, and then this will go on until this condition value is false. So what is it? what is it if what do we want if the condition is true? We want to output the condition and whatever the condition value is. So also we want to output every single loop separately. So that's why I'm entering the end L here. Now I guess we are done here. If I yes, of course, this is a block of code, so I definitely should have written it inside this block of code. Okay, perfect. Okay, if I execute it and run it, compile it. So if I compile it and save it by the name of for loop, so what will happen is command prompt for loop. So okay, so the value is 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. The moment the condition becomes 10, so the 10 is less than 10, that is false, so it will get out of this for loop and the program will stop running further. Okay, perfect. Now what else I wanted to tell you? I think so there is nothing more. So just to explain it, the initial value was 0. It printed the value 0, then broke the line, go on to the next line, went to the next line, and the condition is incremented by the 1, and 1 is less than 10, which is true, so it printed the 1. So the process kept on going unless the condition was false. Okay, this is how for loop works. Now just to show you one more thing, if you name this file for, not for loop, so it will not work here, because for is a key, for is a word which is used for different kind of a function in command prompt. So just look for the naming. What name do you give here? It will work here, but you have to then explicitly write for.exe if you name the document to be for. This is just an extra information just came to mind, so I wanted to share. Now coming back to the presentation, that we want to talk about now the increment operators. This plus increment operator is actually same as counter. Plus is same as counter is equal to counter plus 1. So this plus means increment the value, whatever the initial value is, by 1, and after every loop increment it by the value of 1. In the same is decrement operator, as you have guessed it, it means decrement it by the value of 1, decrease it by the value of 1, subtract it by the value of 1. This is just a short way of writing it. Usually we deal with incrementing and decrementing with by the value of 1 so much that it is feasible to use these kind of shorthand notes. Okay, now there is a compound assignment operator which includes the operator equal to. For example, plus equal to is equal to count, like for example counter plus equal to 3. When there is when this is the when this is the assignment value, then it means that counter is equal to counter plus 3. Okay, the same logic goes on. Minus equal to means counter is equal to counter minus 5. Okay, static equal to 2 means x is equal to x static 2. It means take whatever the initial value or the previous value of the variable is, just multiply the 2 into it and declare and assign it to the same variable, update the variable with that value. The same thing happens here, and the same thing happens with the modulus. X modulus equal to 2, same as x is equal to x modulus 2. It means whatever the variable x contains the value, you divide it by 2, and whatever the remainder is, now save the remainder into that variable x. So x variable value has been updated. Now just coming towards tips, you should always comment one thing liberally, and second thing meaningful, explaining the task. Secondly, don't forget to affect the value of loop variable in while and do while loops. So the value of loop variable or loop condition is done inside the process, inside the block of statements below while loop and below do loop. So you have to do it inside the process, otherwise it will become infinite loop. So make sure that the loop is not in infinite loop. So don't affect the value of loop variable in the body of for loop, because for loop does this by itself in the for statement. In the for statement, in the initial one, what happens is that the third argument handles this kind of work for you. Now lastly, use pre and post increment by decrement operators cautiously in expression. Sometimes it becomes little convoluted, and you might get confused, so be cautious about it. Now you have two tasks. One is that you have to write a program that takes input from user and displays it stable. Secondly, the second task is to write a program using for loop to find the sum of the squares of the integers from 1 to n, where n is a positive value entered by the user. That is, for example, if the user enters 7, so the sum will be equal to 1 square plus 2 square plus 3 square plus 4 square plus 5 square plus 6 square plus 7 square. Perfect. I'll be solving these two tasks in the next lecture, but you should try it yourself, and you should give it a best shot. Thank you.